Thought we might make a bit of a video about all the hoo-ha that's going on about SVG winning at Mexico last weekend, and the comments that Scott Pye made on his show, The Apex Hunters, and sort of reply to his ill-informed, uneducated view of stock car racing. Now, I didn't know much about this guy, and that's not an insult on him. I just don't follow Supercar, so I looked him up. He's ran, according to Wikipedia, he's ran 314 races in supercars. Now, they only race 12 times a year, so that means he's been racing for 26 years. So that didn't make sense to me. So I did a bit of research, and Supercar like to pad out their numbers by suggesting they've done more races than they have, because they only race 12 or 13 times a year, so they split their races up into 3 over a weekend. So realistically, it's his numbers aren't nearly as bad. His win percentage is nearly as bad as it looks on paper, because on paper it's 314 races for 2 wins. But realistically, it's probably more like 100 races or 105 or 10 races, because, like I said, they break their races up into 3 to make it sound like they're doing a lot more races a year than they actually do. So that's all I know about him, Scott Pye, really, from what that little bit of research, because I didn't want to waste too much time talking about that. But he said that stock car drivers aren't real race car drivers because they don't know how to turn left and right. Well, when I was a kid, I rode horses, and I spent a lot of time travelling shows and gymkhanas competing in sporting events. I had a horse called Comanche. Now, he was the typical one-trick pony. He was really good at flag racing and bending racing and barrel racing. That was all he was good at. So that's all he could do. He wasn't good at anything else. So he was a one-trick pony. And that's sort of where you would put Shane Van Gisbergen at the moment. He's a one-trick pony. He can win on paved racetracks, on street circuits, and he'll probably win on a road course as well coming up. I hope he does. I hope he can win at Watkins Glen when the playoffs start, because that'll put him in the top 12. That'll bring me even more money in to Trackhouse, which is his job. His job was to get Trackhouse, that car, into the playoffs, bring in that huge playoff money, and then if he can go from the 16 into the top 12, that brings in more money. When you're talking millions, like multiple millions of dollars, so it's a big deal. So that's his job, and he's doing his job, and Trackhouse are playing to the rules, and the rules are win and you're in. Now, Shane's done nothing. Top 32 in points in the rest of the year, because he just doesn't understand oval track racing. He can't do it. He's not getting any better at it. He's running in the bottom part of the field. He's in a tier 1 team, racing tier 1 equipment with tier 1 resources, and he's having his ass handed to him on the ovals by guys in 2nd tier and 3rd tier teams. So he's really not doing it. So he's a one-trick pony. So my contention is that, according to Scott Pye's analogy, that stock car drivers aren't real race car drivers because they can't turn left and right. Well, that applies to Shane Van Gisbergen as well, because he can't turn left. Also, the analogy that Scott Pye put forward makes no sense either, because Shane got his ass handed to him by Chris Buescher at Watkins Glen last year. He got beat up, out-muscled, out-driven by Chris Buescher to win that Watkins Glen race. Now, I'm sure Shane learned a lesson from that, and he won't let that happen again, and he'll probably put his elbows up and fight back in that situation harder than he did that time. So it was probably a good learning exercise. But when you look at his record on actual road courses that the NASCAR guys race on all the time, in the Cup Series he hasn't won any. Not one. So he did a full season in Xfinity last year. He won a few, but in Xfinity, you've got to be realistic there too, because he's racing against kids. He was the oldest and most experienced guy in the Xfinity series, especially on road course. Of course, he was going to win. But then when he stepped up into last year in a couple of races racing with the big guys in Cup, he failed. He didn't win. When all the Supercar fans expect him to win, because in their mind he's the greatest driver on earth ever, and he's better than everybody else, and he's got to show the NASCAR drivers how it's done. But he hasn't been able to do that. He hasn't been able to show them how it's done. He's won 2 street course races, because Mexico's basically a street course. It's around a park. And he was on wets, which is a lot of the race, so that's his wheelhouse too. But when you put him on a road course, which he's run a couple last year, and he will be running a few this year, he hasn't been able to beat the NASCAR regulars, the guys who aren't real race car drivers. So I don't understand Scott Pye's analogy. I don't understand how he can say they're not real race car drivers when they're kicking Shane's ass. So anyway, I just want to tell you about my one-trick pony, and these V8 Supercar drivers, I reckon they're one-trick ponies as well. They just know how to do one thing. There's nothing organic about V8 Supercars. They all bought their way in, or their daddies did, or someone did. You know, the Trans Am series is a way more organic class of racing to watch. Better racing. You got privateer teams. Got guys, spending their own money. They're busting their ass to get in there with their families, doing what they can to race, and they're good drivers, and you're getting some great drivers in there. For me, that's far better racing on-track racing product than the supercars could ever supply. You know what? It's ridiculous that a professional, I mean, there's not even any prize money in the supercars. They get paid a bonus if they, then, of their payment for being in the class at the end of the year if they win. But there's no actual prize money. But they have pretend pit stops. Apart from, the couple of enduros, they have pit stops that are based on, let's have a pit stop just for the show. Not because they need a pit stop. In NASCAR, they have a pit stop to put tyres on, put fuel in, to make adjustments to the car when they're needed, not when they're told to. You have to have a pit stop by this amount of time in the race, it's just for show. They're completely unnecessary. They're not needed. So it's V8 Supercars is a bit of a circus, really, and all the drivers are pretty much one-trick ponies. They know how to do one thing. So that's my response to Scott Pye saying that the stock car drivers aren't real race car drivers. I don't think he is either. I don't think Scott Pye is either. I haven't seen him do anything apart from, whatever it is he does, and have a couple of wins. In 26 years it would have been if it was actually really was 314 races. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Mate, I'm not bagging the guy. It seems like a nice enough young guy. He's a bit ego-driven, on his show. He talks over Elliott and doesn't give him a run and stuff, but I don't think there's any malice. I think he seems like a nice bloke, and he's doing a good job and doing his best, and more power to him. You know, if you can do what he's doing at his age and be successful and make some money, I think that's great. Cheers.